All right, welcome back, Veteran Nation fans. We are live this morning on today's episode of Coffee with the Skipper. Let me turn down my mic because I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Still am. Hold on. I'm gonna have to use the old headphones here, so give me just a second. I see we've got a bunch of people in here already commenting. Of course, this is gonna be a theme for me. There we go. And today we actually have a guest. He's been on the show before. I'd like to welcome to the show Daniel Toner. Welcome.
Thank you, Skip. It's always good to be with you.
Oh, it's good to have you. So you're a young man, but you're a pundit, essentially, correct?
Oh, that's right. I'm 15 years old. I'm over in the Jersey Shore area. I have been pretty much involved in politics for about the last 4 years since I was 11. I remember knocking doors. I still do it to this day, but now I have definitely progressed. So all that good stuff.
Now, so for our audience today, today is going to be a political show. You might hear some things you don't like. We're gonna be respectful of each other. Uh, we're not going to attack people in comments. I'm just laying down the rules because I know a lot of people get very passionate in our comment section. So we do have some moderators in here right now. So just keep things within the bounds of good taste. Um, so Daniel, I'll start off. We just had a debate. I'd like to get your impression of it.
Yeah, for sure. So there's no question about it that Donald Trump absolutely schooled Kamala Harris in the debate. I mean, I was looking at the polls, it was close to, I think it was 92% to 7. I mean, when you look at the statistics like that, I don't know how anybody can sit there in the right mind and say that Kamala Harris actually did well. When you look at what she's done, I think people are just so fed up with the whole entire administration alone and not the policies and the just America last agenda that's being pushed by them. I mean, come on now. I don't know how people can actually sit there and support somebody like that. So that's my kind of overview of how the debate went. I mean, if I may, the whole statement of the dogs and cats. I mean, I still have the song stuck in my head right now. I don't know if people can relate to that out in the audience, but it definitely was probably one of the biggest highlights of it. And it's true for her to sit there and say that it's not happening when there's literal police body cam footage of it is just, again, the lies from the administration and from her campaign that are now finally coming out.
I'm just retweeting this out so people can find it. So um, I, I in general, I agree with you. I think there was the whole fact checking thing. I think hurt her because they did it to him, but they didn't do it to her. And the most blatant one was the very fine people statement, because even Snopes has done that fact check and said, yeah, no, Trump was not calling white supremacists very fine people. But yet the left, it's like once they seize on to something, they don't really give it up. I do think she did well in the debate, but I don't think she hit on any of the things that she needed to. I think she needed to clarify her policy. I think she needed to let the American people know this is what I will do as president, and I don't think she did any of that. So I don't think she won any votes. Uh, Whereas with Trump, I think he was very disciplined. He was on message. He didn't get into any nasty attacks, which that's what's hurt him in the past. So I think he did. I think he did a great job knowing what he needed to do. Um, do you think there should be another debate?
Personally, if I were Donald Trump, I would not do another debate. And I say that for one of two reasons. First of all, if somebody loses at something, whether it's a game or anything you can really put out there, and they don't do very well, they're automatically going to come out and say, "Oh, let's do it again. I want a rematch. I want this or
Mhm.
that, whatever you want to call it." And that's exactly what the Harris campaign did. I think it was 30 seconds, maybe a minute after the debate ended. And after the polls came out and after people's opinion were really starting to come out on how much they like Donald Trump, why would he do another debate? If he did so well, why put his campaign, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, at risk at going down when he's already going up? So I don't think there should be. If people want to hear more of Kamala Harris's policies, maybe she should hold a press conference, which she has yet to do, and maybe that's how she can get some.
I 100% agree with you. And I do want to address this comment by Squid Pro Quo. I don't think anyone won the debate. I think if people were going to vote for him, they still are. If they were going to vote for Kamala, they still will. I don't think it sway anyone. I agree with that 100%. I think Trump did what he really needed to do, which was just show people, look, I'm calm, confident, and all these establishment people are against me. I think ABC News. I keep saying they're the real losers of the debate. I've said before, you can't really win a debate. You can only really lose a debate, but you can win a debate. It's just incredibly difficult to. But I think ABC absolutely lost that debate. I think by fact checking Trump, they played right into his hands to show that even though he's done 4 years, he's the outsider. He's the one who can break things up, change things. Uh, and I kind of chuckle. The media, after we're at 8 years, they still haven't figured out how to how to deal with Trump. It's like every single time they try to deal with him, they would anyone else, and you can't deal with him the way other people do because he's going to turn it around on you, and he does every single time.
Oh, I totally agree with you, Skip. And this is one of the topics that I know we were kind of going over yesterday, but as far as young people go, they're starting to turn around and say, "Hold on a second, this is not all that should be going on." And I think that's why you're starting to see a progressive level in the amount of young conservatives coming out. Now, don't get me wrong; there's equally, if not maybe a little bit more, um, you know, liberal, younger people out there, which, that's fine. If I have no problem with people wanting to believe different things, but I just think people are starting to open their eyes a little bit and say, I don't think this is right. This is not going to be good for this country. And that's why we're starting to see so much, progress from the conservative movement, especially Turning Point USA. I mean, that's one of the greatest movements out there. I give a lot of credit to Charlie Kirk. He's doing a phenomenal job. But I think that's why a lot of people are starting to move away from the liberal establishment and all these other establishment movements and opening their eyes for freedom in this country.
I agree with you. I think another one who's done some great work on the ground is Scott Pressler, who's been out there just getting people registered. I don't know if you've seen the registration, uh, like the change in registration, just specifically in Pennsylvania. The Democrats had over half a million advantage in 2020, and this year it's already down to 160,000. So that's almost $400,000 flip in terms of a registration. But I do want to pull up this poll right here. So this is interactive polls. They have the post debate poll by ABC Ipsos, and it's 52-46. Full ballot 51-45. Now, I would love to hear your take on this. For me, that's not a debate win. When it's essentially 50-50 like that. Now we can get into polls and sampling issues and all that, but it's essentially for a debate. That's not really like you need it 60-30, like that for it to be like a win. That's my take. How about you?
I actually would just disagree with you on that one point. It all comes down on who and where you're getting people are getting their information from. I don't, of course, know the source of that, poll. I always say never trust the polls. The polls are, I mean, back in 2016, they were saying Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide, and yet she got demolished in a landslide. That's actually, what happened. And for, I don't know, the one I was looking at the poll, I'm talking about the polls that he was up 92% to, I think it was 7. I might be mistaken on those numbers, but that's what I at least remember. And so when you look at numbers like that, I think that's the number he was looking for, and did exceptionally well in. Of course, if you add the endorsement factors, I'm not really sure if Elon Musk or Kennedy have endorsed him. I think it was before the debate. And then, of course, after the debate, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala, which that isn't looking too well for her anyway. There's conservative women coming out now on how much that they like Donald Trump. So it's actually a pretty good thing that she endorsed Kamala, because it's showing all the conservative women now are moving over to the Republican side.
I don't think endorsements ever, unless if it's like a huge endorsement that no one expects. I don't really think they ever do anything um, other than just get people talking. So yeah, she can do that. It For me, it didn't change anything about the race. Now that poll that I showed, that's ABC Ipsos, and I do want people to know ABC Ipsos, as we've seen in the last two elections, underestimate Donald Trump's support every single time. Uh, Now she's ahead in that one, head to head, 5 points. If I remember correctly, that poll had Biden winning by 8 points, and he only ended up winning by about 5. So that puts, if that's how far they're off, and we apply that metric, then she's only up 2, according to that poll. But again, there's when it comes to polls, there's a lot of things that people will say. Well, what about oversampling? What about weighting? All these things, over representation, under representation. So what I generally do is whenever there's a new poll, I start going into the crosstabs and looking and seeing, does this make sense for one, for what they're saying? For instance, Richard Barris was highlighting a poll yesterday, and I think he tweeted out something about today. He said, "How on earth is Minnesota only 4 points if Harris has a 5 point national lead?" Yeah, if you put out a national poll and a state poll, it should make sense. And yeah, Minnesota is a left leaning state. If, if Harris is 5 points ahead, it should be at least 5 points ahead or more. But instead, they only have her 4 points ahead. So it just tells you that there's something odd in the sampling there.
For sure. And I always go back to something, I think it was yesterday I was listening to about Donald Trump. He, back in 2016, they had him, like I said before, like losing everything, that Hillary was going to win in a landslide, this and that, and this and that. And it turns out that, of course he won, but he won for one of two reasons. And this again goes right back to the polls. Um, the amount of people that get asked, "Oh, who did you vote for? Who did you do this or that?" The amount of people that said, "I don't care," or "no comment," was like 20, 30%. And those are all, at least in our minds, Republicans, because if you look at the results of the election, he won. And so that's, again, gets right back to the point. You can't trust the polls. And it all comes down to where, like even what you were saying before, that those polls were off by a lot or a couple of numbers, and that's huge. So again, do we trust the polls or do we not trust the polls? Is that question?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's we've seen this time and time again. I would say probably since 2000, 2004. Like when you come out of Labor Day, the polls are all over the place pre-Labor Day. You come out of Labor Day, and what we've generally seen is them favoring one candidate, and then they tighten. And about 90% of the time, it favors the Democrat candidate, is what we've seen. And we're already seeing a tightening of the polls since Labor Day. I do want to say, for because you're on X. I've got your at name down below. So if anyone is watching and you would like to follow Daniel, that's his at name. Definitely give him a follow. Do you have any other social media?
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So I try and stay away from a lot of the social media, believe it or not. I don't have, TikTok
Smart
or
man.
any of these other weird. Yeah, yeah. It's a little. I'm a little bit different, but I think that's a good thing actually because the Chinese Communist Party that controls TikTok and all these other things, at least that's from what we hear and what I believe, are stealing all of Americans' information, and I don't think that's a good thing. I don't want my information going out to them. I don't think anybody else does either, but they still join. But anyway. I really try and limit myself to social media. So I don't really have many. I try not to be super active on it because, I do enjoy, I don't think many people know this about me, but I have my own, landscaping side gig. So I'm always working outdoors and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, people can just follow me on X if they want.
I think you're incredibly smart for that. Also for the site, yeah, definitely. I've told so many people on you should have your own LLC. I don't care who you are. You should start an LLC. You never know. It's just a good way to protect yourself and your money. Now,
Definitely. Yeah.
I do want to get into because you're 15, and younger people, as we've been seeing these polls, younger people are trending more MAGA than what we've probably ever seen. I'm a Gen Xer. When I grew up, they were trying to get us to vote. They said, "Yeah, we're the voice of a new generation" and all this stuff, right? And you know, when I was 18, when I was 18, it had already kind of faded. Where when I was younger, like all the Gen Xers were like, "Yeah, we're going to get involved. We're going to fix things." But by the time I turned 18, they were like, "Yeah, this can't be fixed. Everything is nuts." And there was so much apathy. But I've always voted. I've tried to vote in every single election since I turned 18. What are you seeing in your generation?
For sure. So although I am in the Jersey Shore area, we tend to trend more conservative down here than up north. So a lot of my friends that go to school with me are definitely more conservatives than, I guess you can consider people from up north, if you will. But I think if you look at the statistics, I was looking at some a couple of weeks ago that boys, younger men, are leaning more conservative, and younger women are leaning more liberal. That's just the polls that I saw. Could be wrong, could be right. I'm not too sure. But I think if you look around, that kind of makes sense. That's at least I think what we're seeing. So I hope people get out there and say, this ain't right. We got to go with the MAGA movement. And people say, oh, they're a MAGA Republican, MAGA this and that. All it means is make America great again. And honestly, make America healthy again is probably, I would say, one of the more important issues. And I'm sure we'll get to that in a quick minute. But that's all, really important and good stuff that we got to really start, cracking down on.
Absolutely, and it's good to hear your perspective because uh, while I can be involved in a lot of things, I'll never see things the way that your generation does, and that there's nothing wrong with that. It's a different perspective. So very happy to hear you guys are caring about the state of the country. Uh, how do you see the border and immigration issue?
Oh, absolutely. So this is one of the hard-hitting issues that everyone's facing now, especially, I mean, at this point, I think every state has become a border state. People say, oh, we're all the way up north, so it'll never happen to us. Well, it is happening. It's actually, I just saw the other day in New York City, I think it was a bunch of Haitian, was it women or something? They were all, not really fully, clothed in a store and
I did see
just
that.
walking around. I don't think that's what we should be supporting or doing. Don't get me wrong. If people want to come to this country, that's great. I'm all for it. But you got to do it the right way. You got to do it legally. and I give a lot of credit to the people that are doing it legally, who are going through the system and, you know, writing their names, because that's what we all had to do. You know, when we were born, we had to be put on the American, you know, citizenship thing, and that's what people have to do. They can't just come in illegally and expect to be treated a certain way, because it's not going to happen. And as far as the border goes, Kamala Harris and the Biden administration, crooked Joe Biden, has yet to, I think it was even call Governor Abbott yet, and at least have a phone call with the man. I mean, this is a man who's working on the clock 24 hours, securing the border on their own. So I give a lot of credit to Texas and putting up the border wall themselves, because if the federal government isn't going to do it, they're going to do it. And that's exactly what they're doing right now. Now, what I think should happen is we need to really crack down on getting this border wall built. Of course, if Donald Trump won back in 2020, I would say it would be built at this point, right? But it's not, because his term was cut short, unfortunately. So that's one of the biggest things. And the other thing is we need to do, and a lot of people don't like to hear it, but it's the reality. We have to do mass deportations. We just have to. We can't have all these people in this country illegally. Now we can maybe put them in a, you know, safer area from where they came from, because I'm sure a lot of these people are leaving because of, you know, poor areas and crime. But I'm not saying they have to go back exactly where they were, but just stay out of it for a little bit until you come in the right way. So that's my take on the border. There's so much more that I could, you know, dig into, and I'm sure you could too. But that's just one of the bigger issues at hand.
You know, probably the biggest thing that's been memed out of the debates about immigration is the whole "they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats," and I had to laugh because I'm from Ohio. I've got family in Ohio, and I had heard that prior to the debate. I had seen, you know, the pictures that people post online of the Haitians grabbing the geese and the ducks out of the park, but I had talked with family members, and they were like, oh, there's this story about someone taking a cat, skinning it, and now outside the yard, and you know, waiting to barbecue it. Uh, so I'd heard those stories, and then for it to come into the debate, and then after the debate, this is where I think the left makes a mistake. The whole thing is that we joke around to say that the left can't meme, and with that they made a big deal of it, and that just gave the right, you know, just carte blanche. They just started memeing it, and I've seen several left wing pundits lose it this week. Have you been following that stuff?
I've been, you know, moderately looking at it. I wouldn't say I'm, you know, eyeballing it 24/7, but, you know, if something pops up, I'll take a look at it. I'm sure you can say the same. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those weird things. And like you said, that the left, you know, doesn't really understand. You know, once they put something out there, it's staying there. It's not going away. And as soon as, you know, you bring it into a debate, it's the ball's rolling from there. So yeah, it's definitely wild what's going on. But
I find
if it's the reality
it's
stuff,
just funny. It's not going to switch any vote. It's just funny, but you know, you have all these people in the news. They're like, well, see, the city manager says it's not happening. Okay, well, no one believes the city manager because he's got what I'll say, he's got a vested interest in it not happening. So of course they're going to deny. That doesn't mean it's not happening. You have citizens going in front of their city council saying that it's happening. So for me, it's just something that, you know, about something that, you know, it's not going to change any votes. Really find it humorous as to how passionate people are getting over it, and how, you know, you got one side, you know, screaming about it and the other side just laughing about it. So that it's interesting watching that dichotomy. Um, do you want to? So you're in New Jersey. You're right next to Pennsylvania, and this is a big question in Pennsylvania. The whole chemicals in our food. Those who don't know, there's a very big case in Pennsylvania right now about pasteurized milk. And in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of Amish people who they don't drink pasteurized milk. And some are saying it's designed to go right after the Amish. Some people are like, no, it's protection of our food. Um, let's talk about the chemicals in our food and your outlook on it.
For sure. So this is one of the issues that I probably, look at one of the most, I'd say, as far as just eating regular food for our family. But it's just one of the issues that people need to really look at and really just do their research in, because it's all one circle. It's all these big corporations buying these smaller ones and putting these chemicals in their food to get people to want to eat it more, which means people are going to want to buy it more. And if you look at the chronic disease rate in this country, it is skyrocketed, especially in younger people, people my age, even younger, with ADHD, cancers, all these different things. And it's really a terrible, terrible thing. The biggest thing I'd say that people have to look for and of try and avoid is all of these seed oils that are being manufactured. So what do I mean by that? I mean anything from soybean oil, peanut oil, cottonseed oil, canola oil, all these different oils. And this is the reason why, because they cause chronic diseases and, more importantly, heart diseases, obesity, high levels in cancer. Now, don't get me wrong, if you eat it one time, probably it's not going to happen. But when people eat it continuously over and over again, that's the danger in it and why it becomes so big of an issue. Now, when you look at seed oils and vegetable oils, this is one of the things in this country that is heavily subsidized by the government. Now, why is it subsidized by the government? Well, because it's corrupt. That's why. And 75% of the FDA's budget comes from the regulated industry. So anything from big pharma and all these other corporations who own these manufacturing things. And it all gets circles back to, like I said in the beginning, higher corporations controlling the smaller ones. And as far as the food industry goes, one of the biggest things is where you're getting your food from. Now, I can say for me and my family, if we're going to go grocery shopping, we don't just go to ShopRite and buy our meat, or we don't go to the regular name brand grocery store. No, we're going to go to a farm market or a clean market where people will get grass-fed meat, all organic. Now, I'm not saying you have to do this, but this is what we do, because the grass-fed meat is not going to have all of those chemicals in it that factory-produced meat farms do. It's just not, because it's all healthy, homegrown, farm grown, whatever you want to call it, and it's just much better for you. Now, if you look at things such as food coloring is one of the biggest things, because it is a petroleum product, and it is associated with a lot of high levels of depression, and that's another reason why we're seeing such a skyrocket in depression in this country, especially for younger people. So one of the bigger issues that we have to really dig deep at, get to the root cause of it. And I'm a big fan of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I don't agree on everything, of course, but for the most part, I think he's pretty good in a lot of his policies that I support. So, and if he can get in under Trump's administration, I'm hoping he gives him a cabinet position or something that he can really get the ball rolling on this and stop what's going on.
I have to laugh when it comes to our food because you have a lot of different factions who are very much anti-corporatism, but then when it comes to regulations, they're all on board with these regulations. And what they I don't know if they just don't understand it or if they just don't care. What these regulations do is it makes it harder for smaller businesses to operate. Because a big corporation, they'll just throw money at it, hire more people, and they'll be able to meet the regulation. But when it's a local farmer, hiring somebody is going to eat up all, if not most, of their profit. So it's not really on the cards for them to be able to meet all the things of the regulation. We actually saw that with the Supreme Court this last term. A big major decision was that they had this rule that the I don't think it was the FDA. I think it was quite possibly the EPA that told these crab fishermen that you have to pay a government inspector to be on your boat while you're fishing. And that's what the lawsuit was about. And the Supreme Court said, yeah, no, that like the way it said it was, it said may be or may have to pay fees for the inspections and for the regulations, but the the FDA, EPA, I'm not sure who it was, said, "Oh, we're going to interpret this to mean you actually have to hire a government person to be on your boat when you go fishing," which is, it's just crazy, but it highlights how these regulations, with a big corporate fishing company, yeah, sure, we'll have 5 guys on staff, that we pay, and that we'll give it an office, and then when the boat goes out, we'll just put one with it. They can do that, but when you're talking, a family-run fishing thing, it's so much harder for them to do that. They're not going to be able to pay someone just to sit around and then go out when they go out. So I laugh at all these people who, we want our food protected. Not saying we don't, uh, but when they put on these regulations, it makes it incredibly hard for our uh, small businesses. And my whole take on it is, if the Amish want to drink unpasteurized milk, drink away. We should have those rights. Uh, I've got no problem with saying, okay, put a warning label on it, or have a warning label somewhere. Doesn't mean doesn't exactly mean it's got to be on the jar, but when you buy it, you should know it's not pasteurized.
For sure. And, not for nothing, but we get our food from, a lot of the Amish markets. So I give a lot of credit to the Amish people. They're one of the most hardworking people in this country, and they get looked down upon so many times, especially even this case here. But I have to say, they're probably one of the healthiest people, one of the, maybe
Oh,
not the
absolutely.
most healthiest, but one of the healthiest people, groups of people in the entire country, if not world, because they are not going to kowtow to the establishment telling them what to do, what to eat, what to take, this and that. Now, I don't agree with them on everything, but for the most part, I think they're doing a good job. And for them to sit there and stand together and make decisions with each other as a community and as a group, whatever you want to call it, they do pretty good at that. So that's my take on that.
I've got this comment I wanted to put up here. I grow my own food, have chickens for eggs, goats for milk, 9 chihuahuas because they are my therapy, and a potbelly pig just because I wanted her. And that's the way I think it should be. We should have that type of freedom. Um, I I don't know if I could deal with 9 chihuahuas. I had a chihuahua once, and she was a handful.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I have a pit bull chihuahua, believe it or not, but she's a good one. She's a good dog.
Yeah, my jump in my lap and make an appearance. My poodle, um, because yeah, she's been very needy here lately and wanting to get on camera. Normally, it's just my cat. I'm just looking through here to take a look to see if any of the commenters have anything uh, interesting that I should be asking you. I've been listening to you, and I've been following up on the comments. So that's why I'm taking a look here. Um, Here's a good one. Polls are only as accurate as the question and sample size. If the question is skewed, the results follow. That's very true. There's also a lot of things that can affect a poll. What is the mode? Are you calling people in person? Is it a text poll? Is it an internet poll? The ones that I seem to trust the most, I find, are what they call mixed mode polls, where there's several different ways that they're reaching out to people, because younger people, you, if you're calling landlines, you're not talking to younger people. You're talking to, people in their 50s, 60s, and higher. Uh, However, I've seen where some people they'll take a random number generator and it'll come up with the first seven numbers for a phone number, and then they fill it in with the last two. So that way you get a mix of um, you get a mix of landlines and cell phones, because cell phones and landlines, you can get whatever numbers available. So I've seen that as a mode of randomization that I think is pretty good. Um, but I've also seen, in fact, I'll pull it up because I couldn't believe that this happened. And I asked a couple people that if I can get it here, a couple people that I follow. I saw this picture and it was posted on Instagram. Okay, here we go. Let me share this. And can I zoom in? No, it's not going to let me zoom in. But pretty much what this says is this is a text message that someone posted, and it said, "We've asked 7 times if you support Kamala Harris, but you still didn't complete the poll. Reply via personal link." And then the person who was contacted said, "This is the most aggressive spam polling I've ever gotten. More flies with honey, I'm pretty sure, is how the expression goes." So that, to me, is a bad poll. I don't know what polling firm that is, but I would say that's a junk poll. If you are trying to push people to answer, you're going to get skewed results. And I can't tell you which way it's going to skew, but you're going to get skewed results. With this one, it says if you support Kamala Harris. I don't know. I would hope that's an internal poll uh, because it's advocating for a candidate.
Yeah, definitely. And this is one of the biggest things that people, I think, why people don't like the polls and disagree with the polls or don't have a lot of trust with the polls, because they're all ran by, a lot of them at least, by news media corporations that put them out. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who go out there and put polls out on their own. But again, it's all, who knows? People could have, 1,000 bots answer it, and, we don't know what they're getting there and, how they're doing it. So that's why I don't really have a lot of trust for the polls. At the end of the day, it all comes down to how it looks on the, people are putting out on the internet. Like if people support Trump, support Harris, people can kind of come out with a decision on their own without the polls. I mean, I'm not, like I said, a big fan of them, but if that's what people, want to do and want to carry themselves, then that's good for them.
Star has a comment. Canada had a big case of finding a farmer guilty of selling unpasteurized milk in 2008. Yeah, I've got no problem with people if they want to buy and drink pasteurized milk. Just, we should be informed that that's what it is. I got no problem with it. Um, you know, in my life, and I'm not incredibly old, 45 years old, I would say the question of is milk healthy has flip-flopped at least 20 times. And some people still today will tell you it's not healthy to drink. Some people will tell you it's healthy to drink. It's flip-flopped. There's so much. It's one product that has so much argument, and I would say none of the studies are incredibly clear, because just as fast as you can get a study that says it's healthy, you can get another study that says it's not. And when I was young was the time where they were first starting to say that milk was not healthy. I am of the belief that it is, because when people stop drinking milk is when I saw obesity start really going up. And that's my take on it.
For sure. So, me personally, like I always drink milk. People say, "Oh, you shouldn't drink milk, this and that," but I'm going to drink milk. I don't care. But it all comes down to where you're getting it from. Is it treated with you know artificial chemicals and all that stuff, or is it natural? If it's natural, then you're fine, and you're going to have all the natural fats, or 2% fat, whole milk, whatever you want to call it. You're free to buy whatever, but it all comes down to, at the end of the day, where you're getting it from. Somebody can get a pound of meat from ShopRite that's been sprayed with all chemicals, and get a pound of meat from a local deli market that is all natural. At the end of the day, like I said, it comes down to where you're getting it
Mhm.
from, what the
Oh,
manufacturer is. So
Um, hey, we've got 57 people watching right now. Bulk of you guys are on YouTube. So everyone, smash the like, give us your comments. We really do appreciate the comments. You guys help us with the flow of the show, and retweet all that stuff. You do help us when you do that stuff. Uh, We're going to take a short break. Not very long, only like a minute. Because I am out of coffee. I've drinking all mine, so I'm going to go get more coffee to be drinking. Uh, but we'll take a quick 1 minute break. I'll put on the bumper. But take that time to share this out if you would, please. We do appreciate it. Uh, and then we'll be right back. Okay. Okay, there we are. We are back. I I got to get my cup of energy.
hey, I feel you, Skip. It's well, at least for me on the East Coast, it's 10:17. So I'm sure over there on the West Coast, it's a lot earlier. So I can definitely feel you on that one.
7:17 right now in the morning, and yeah, morning came early today.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Now, the one thing both me and TC always really agree on Veteran Nation is we're very big in terms of freedom, and the the biggest ones are our first six amendments to us. And I do want to talk about all that's been happening with the Second Amendment. We do have some big cases that have come down from the Supreme Court, and now we're starting to see some trickle effect of those rulings now starting to affect the lower courts. Um, let's talk a little bit about guns, one of my favorite subjects.
Absolutely. So, of course, everyone knows that if people don't know, I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. I don't think you can find someone more, at least my age, who supports the Second Amendment than me. I think people have the right to buy whatever gun they want, buy whatever grenade launcher they want, buy whatever you want. But, as long as people know the consequences in that, not to do things, people should be free to buy it. I don't care. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the harsh reality on what is going on. And what is going on is we have a group of people in the government who wants to grab your guns and our guns. I don't personally own guns myself, my family does, but at the end of the day, they're coming for them. And at least here in Jersey, and I'm sure many other liberal states like California, New York, wherever you want to call it, Oregon, Washington, all these liberal states are taking people's guns. And I just reflect back on how can we let this happen? We look at the past couple centuries back in the late 1700s when the British wanted to do that to us. We revolted and we said, hold on a second, this isn't going to happen, because the second they grab our guns, they now have every right, or not every right, but they now have the ability to, move into a totalitarian state because they know they're not going to get any pushback. And when you look at countries like Canada, which once was at least in my opinion, more of like a free state, is now slowly starting to turn into, a communistic totalitarian state. I mean, I have, partial relatives up in Canada, and they can barely even own a gun up there. They can own what, a 22 little, whatever you want to call it. Like, what's that going to do? It's not going to do very much. And that's one of the biggest things, and we can't let that happen in this country.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, it's interesting you brought up Canada, because in Canada, Jordan Peterson became very famous because they were changing the they were just they decided to start regulating speech, and they were saying no, there's going to be these tribunals that'll determine, if you said something that was so grossly offensive it did damage to someone. And the famous case was the comedian Mike Ward. He had done a joke. He had done a make a wish for a young kid, or did a benefit for a young kid who did a make a wish, and he had some disease. And his joke was, like 5, 6 years later, the kid was still alive, and he was like, maybe I should get my money back. Just a throwaway joke. But then he got sued by the kid and his mother, saying that caused the kid to be ridiculed and bullied, which eventually it was overturned, but it cost him thousands of dollars, multiple years of this making its way through the Canadian court system. And the thing is, if you have to deal with lawsuits over your speech, you don't have free speech. And that was where I first started seeing, and that was the same law that Jordan Peterson was talking about with, trans people. It was the same law that was used to fine this comedian. So, you know, a lot of people who are complaining, they complain about this and that. There is that slippery slope, and you have to be very careful with it. And we are seeing it here in this country. And, we have people who want an assault weapons ban. And I always like to remind them, look, the Columbine shooting happened during the 90s assault weapons ban. It was fully in effect. But what the Columbine shooting highlighted is the real problem, which was straw purchases, because the Columbine shooters had a friend of theirs who was 18. They went to a gun show. She bought a gun that was meant for them. That is a completely and totally illegal purchase. Here in California, now the Supreme Court has they're doing more and more cases to free up our gun rights here, but in the Ninth Circuit, we just had one about sensitive places, which I think is an absolute abhorrent bill. I'm in California; it does apply to me. California and Hawaii have some of the most restrictive guns, but yeah, you're starting to see these very liberal states go even further and further because they're losing at the Supreme Court level.
Oh, for sure. And that again rolls right back to, are people going to stand for this? And look at states like Texas, Ohio, even parts of Pennsylvania, I guess Florida. People are allowed to carry a gun on them. I think people should be allowed to conceal, open carry in public. I think people should be able to. Why shouldn't they? As long as they go through the right training process and they know what they're doing, they should be free to defend themselves. Because guess what? People always say, what's the solution to gun violence? Crack down on people's guns, take them away. That's not the solution. And I'll tell you why it's not. The criminals are here to break the law. So whatever law you put in place, they're regardless going to break it and get the guns. So all you're doing at the end of the day is hurting people who are following the rules.
See, we're very fair here. Everyone knows I'm voting for Trump, but I will absolutely put people who disagree up on the show. A lot of the lefty guests that I invite don't want to come on, and they're like, "No, you're too right wing for me." I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and oh, for sure. And at the end of the day, listen, am I a conservative? Yes, but am I willing and wanting to hear what the other side has to say? Absolutely. I think it's so important, because guess what? The second that we stop talking to each other and finding solutions to coordinate with each other, that's when the real chaos starts. And if you look back during the 1700s when this country was being made, all the founding fathers didn't agree on everything, but guess what? They came together, they made solutions, and that's exactly, at least what I think we have to do right now.
Conflicts and debate breed solutions. Debate is actually about the exchange of information, and people who avoid conflict, their ideas are going to stagnate and not be as good because they haven't been challenged. And you have to always have your worldview challenged. And that's why I appreciate you coming on. That's why I appreciate the last time you came on, because TC is very much a libertarian. He was not easy on you. He was asking you some very direct questions, and you were fine answering. The When it comes to guns, I heard this and I think it's a great idea. And what we need is someone in certain position, a sheriff somewhere in the United States, to do this. There's already, we talk about concealed carry, and there's already a reciprocity bill out there, but it only applies to law enforcement. So here's how I think we can get more people, even in very blue states, to be to legally concealed carry. And that's for, if we had one sheriff in the United States who said, look, I'm going to do a reserve deputy program. And if you want to be a part of this, you have to go through a background check. You got to do some law enforcement training, but you can become a reserve deputy. And if we ever have an emergency, we're going to put the call out, and whichever of you responds, you'll get you'll be able to respond and help us out in our emergency. But the trade-off is you now are officially law enforcement, which means you can take your weapon, you can fly with your weapon, you can conceal carry in all 50 states. That is a way, I think, we need someone with some guts to run for sheriff somewhere in the United States and say, I don't care where you are in the U.S., as long as you meet these criteria that we're going to set up, you can be a deputized reserve deputy, and you then can legally carry throughout all 50 states.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to be, looked at. In my case, I think that it's very important to, support the men and women in uniform who protect us all. And, hell, if people want to, join as a, reserve deputy, if that's something that ever happens, and the return is they get to carry a firearm to protect themselves, that's great. I mean, I look at here in Jersey, believe it or not, people can conceal carry a firearm. They can do that. And this is how, because they'll have to take the same classes that police officers take. And as long as they do that and they pass and they do very well in their training, they're able to conceal carry. I'm all for that. I think that's great. I am somewhat opposed to, I guess you could say, just handing someone a gun and having them go out. I don't know if that's the smartest thing. Have a little bit of training so they at least know what they're doing. But as long as they do that, I don't care. People should be free to carry whatever gun they want.
And if I were that sheriff, what I would do is I would say, for you to do this, you have to take this training every single year, and you can make it, like computer classes and stuff like that. But it's a very, gun safety, basic law enforcement type stuff, basic emergency response type stuff. And I'd be like, it's going to be $25, $50 for you to take that course, but that's going to be part of the whole deal. And that's money coming into your county or parish, or where, if you're in Louisiana. For me, it's a win on multiple levels, because the people I find who want to concealed carry most times are not your criminals. They're people who can pass a background check, people who will take a gun safety course. And those are the people that we should have armed.
Definitely. That's exactly, I think you just got to the root cause right there, that people have to, at the end of the day, who are wanting these concealed carry and open carry things and wanting their guns, is the right people that should have the guns, because, and I think I was going on this before, the people who break the law and the people that are the criminals, they're going to break the law regardless. So no matter what rules you put in place, no matter what laws you pass, they're going to break the law. And that's at the end of the day why we have to support the law and the men and women in blue and uniform. And that's why I'm such a big believer in the Second Amendment and supporting our law enforcement officers.
I do want to put a couple things here. If we can, Trump is a convicted felon. He can't even own a gun. That is not true per New York's rules. So New York's rules say you're not officially a convicted felon until you've been convicted by a jury and then sentenced by a jury. So currently he is not considered legally a convicted felon. He can own a gun. He can vote. And I expect that that case will be thrown out. That case was dropped. It has not been dropped yet, so I want to clarify that it's in the sentencing phase. They pushed the sentencing now to late November, but the Supreme Court has already ruled they used immune stuff in that case. It's going to be tossed. It is going to be tossed because it's just like if you were to use attorney-client privilege stuff, and that's clearly attorney-client privilege. Like that whole conviction has to be thrown out, and you have to start over from day one. So that Trump was wrongly convicted in a kangaroo court. You can argue that. The big thing about all these Trump cases is they're all trying to rush them, and that's when you rush things, you make mistakes, you have problems. And that's exactly what we're seeing with all of the Trump cases, is that there's issues with those cases. That's why the Supreme Court was able to intervene. And I am not convinced that Trump will ever see a day in jail from any of these current cases. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. There's no way that anybody in their right mind, even in the jury, unless they're all super far left liberals, that they're going to convict someone at this level. I mean, people can just see it. People are now opening their eyes and saying, "This is ridiculous. This is crazy." And the fact that they're actually, like you said, rushing this and trying to make this all happen before election time, which is right now. What more proof do people need? And I think that they're actually seeing that it is a rigged system. It is a system that they don't want Trump to win, because if they do, they know their time is over. And that is why they're working so hard to stop this man. Hell, they even tried to put a bullet in his head. And when you have stuff like, I think people are starting to forget this. Like, this was only a couple months ago. He was almost assassinated, which is crazy that we even have to say that. But it's the harsh reality. And people are finally starting to open their eyes and look at the actual facts and reality of things.
Yeah, with these cases, they've all failed, and because the public doesn't support them. Every time they've tried to remove Trump from ballot, every time they've indicted him, what you've seen is a bump for Trump in the polls. It makes him more likable. But that's one thing I laugh about with the left is they when they see that it's a failing strategy, they think, and I've pointed this out before. The left always thinks that the problem isn't what they're doing. They think it's the messaging, and they're going to keep trying it again. And it's like, okay, you can keep trying and failing. It's not gonna, it's not gonna change the reality of the situation. So watch that. If Trump ends up winning, you're going to see the left say, "Oh, the people were actually on our side. We just had our messaging was off," because that's one of their favorite things they like to go to. With Republicans, it's the opposite. You get establishment people who think, "Oh, well, no, this candidate or this issue was the problem, or the way this bill was written." People are actually on our side. They don't really say that's a messaging, but they still get convinced that people are on their side. And guns are a loser issue for the left. I can't tell you how many times it's been put up for vote, And when you've had like really crazy anti-gun candidates where that's one of their main issues, they always lose because there's a lot of Democrats who have guns. There's a lot of Democrats who want their family to be safe. And when you're dealing with it at a personal level like that, you're always going to lose. But yet they still keep pushing it. And I'm like, it's like Sun Tzu. When your enemy is making a mistake, don't stop them.
Oh, for sure. And this is again like people don't understand. Like people want to have guns. People feel protected when they have their guns, and they should because who knows in today's world. I mean, I was looking at something happen a couple of weeks ago. I think it was over in Colorado or something. What I think it was a bunch of illegal immigrants ransacked an entire apartment complex. I mean, in that situation, with all the illegals coming, I would want to have a gun because I don't know what they're going to do. I would want to. And for Democrats to sit there and say, "Oh, you can't have this or that," I don't see it helping their situation at all whatsoever. It's not going to happen.
Another story that they denied was true until we started getting the videos of it. That's another thing. Like, I laugh that one side is like, "Oh, we got to fact check this," but yet when the truth comes out, they're like, they run from it. That's why I keep saying X has improved since Elon took over, primarily because of community notes. Like, he's not stopping anyone from saying whatever, but the solution to free speech is always more free speech. But community notes, like when people are posting, incorrect things, and we can say, "Hey, community notes, you gotta tag this," and let the people then decide which side they believe. Um, and yeah, it, watching people freak out about community notes is hilarious.
Oh, it's very funny. It's one of the very few things I think us as conservatives can kind of have a good time at watching. So,
One of my favorite X follows that I follow is Bad Legal Takes. And do you ever follow that account?
I'm sure I've seen it at some point. If you bring it up, I'm sure I've seen it
I'll,
at
I'll
some.
pull it up. It's definitely one it's run by a couple attorneys, and it's really fun. The thing is, they uh, yeah they it's not one sided. Like, they're very fair. It's just these are bad takes about how the law is, and it's funny because you see some trends on here. This is the account right here, and it's definitely worth a follow for those who haven't followed it. But you see a lot of people saying a lot of stuff about HIPAA that's absolutely false. Like, "Oh, I can't tell you my medical conditions because that's a HIPAA violation." HIPAA only applies to your medical insurer and your employer. And when it comes to your employer, that more is the Family Medical Leave Act than it is HIPAA. Uh, or the other one I love to see is they love to quote the often quoted, "You can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater." Yes, you can. That was overturned in 1969 in a case concerning the Ku Klux Klan out of Ohio, uh, and you can yell fire in a crowded movie theater, and if there's a fire, you should yell fire in a crowded movie theater. And I always go into the comments and I'll be like, "Yeah, my uncle, he had to close down his movie theater because he couldn't fire his employees because you can't say fire in a movie theater." That's one of my favorite things to when people quote that. But yeah, you can yell fire in a crowded movie theater. You most of the things that people say about HIPAA, and the new one I see, and they were actually talking about it with the debate, was the Logan Act. A lot of people don't understand what the Logan Act is. Um, so yeah, that's just a good account to follow because there's some really funny stuff. And for those watching, you guys know I always follow certain court cases and different things of corruption and harassment and whatnot. This is like, I follow attorneys. I'm not saying, I had we had Bruce the Deuce last night talking about this show because I got sent the clip uh, and saying that we're doing legal analysis. We are not doing legal analysis. We are just putting out there the stuff involved in the court case. I'll tell you my opinion of it, my analysis, but I'm not a lawyer. I can't do legal analysis. I can do journalistic analysis. Um, so I have to laugh about that. But most journalists who've covered court have a generalized understanding. I'm not going to say I'm an expert in anything, but I do understand how most court works. Um, so I'm laughing about all this stuff. And I was saying months ago about the Trump cases. Yeah, these are going to get tossed. They're all going to get tossed. But I do have to laugh how, with them taking it to the Supreme Court, we're actually now starting to find the limitations of presidential power. Uh, have you followed a lot of these cases very closely?
I've had a brief, overview of them. I wouldn't say I'm the most knowledgeable in it as much as I probably should be, but I definitely don't have a lot of the nitty gritty details as, you might have or other people might have. So I might not, be the best person to, bring those up. But I'm sure I can, I know certain things about it for sure. So.
Yeah, for me, it's just interesting. Like I've said before, being in the military, I had to interact with JAG lawyers all the time. So I would just be like, "Hey, let's go to lunch," and I would just start picking their brain about legal stuff, and just asking questions. If for I would recommend to pretty much anyone, if you have a lawyer that buy him lunch and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Um, I get people who do that with me. I've had several other journalists who've called me about veteran stuff or about military stuff, and they're like, "What do you think about this?" And I'll take a look at it and be like, "Okay, well, you know, not all of it I would say I'm an expert on, but once you've been in government or in the military for a while, you kind of figure out, yeah, here's how these things go." Rare does someone ever send me something where I'm like, "Oh, I don't have a clue." Um, you kind of figure it out. It's all very logical. Um, I'm trying to think if there was any other topics that I wanted to discuss. Do you have any topics you want to discuss that we haven't discussed yet?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think one of the most important issues that that are starting to actually look at is the war machine and the military industrial complex. This is one of the big issues at hand that is the center of all the corruption going on. And people are now, I at least would hope so, are finally opening their eyes about. And the fact that all these different wars are going on and have been going on for years, so for decades. It's such a terrible, terrible thing and it's the lives that are being cost are the people, the younger people, my age who are being sent over to, these places to fight. And a lot of them are unfortunately losing their lives. And it's not a good thing. It should not be happening. And I give a lot of credit to our service members and people of the United States military because they are the true heroes of this country. They're the ones who go out and fight the battles that no one else does. And it's important that we support them. And by the military industrial complex, those are the real enemies right there. Those are the ones that we should be fighting against here at home. Because at the end of the day, if something happens, they're going to ship those men and women my age to fight those wars and to go die in those wars just so that they can get a pretty penny at the end of the day. And it's such a terrible, terrible thing that's going on.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, there's a lot of that happening right now. And war is constantly evolving and changing. Uh, for those who didn't watch our last episode of Veteran Nation Live with me and TC, we actually did a story about there's a guy who's a retired Marine. He had a website for the last 20 years that was just kind of sitting out there. And he started watching what was going on with Ukraine and Russia. And he's literally like just a civilian now writing doctrine. He's turned this website into a blog, and he's talking about drone warfare, which is now the new type of warfare. And I mean, when I say drone warfare, I'm not talking about like our big drones where we're bombing. We're talking about personal drones going after personnel. So which is now a new way of fighting, and it's really going to change our the way we fight. And if you don't think it will, I'm telling you, take it from this Marine. It is going to change the way we fight. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The military people say the military industrial complex, and that comes from uh, 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 Smedley Butler. That's where that term kind of originated, and then Dwight Eisenhower used it as well. It's pretty much the war machine. All these companies that benefit off of us fighting wars because they can sell things, and we are partially responsible for the Ukraine war. We told Russia, 30 years ago, we would not move to make Ukraine a NATO member, and then we did. And Russia doesn't want NATO on its border. Uh, for us, that was to make money. It has nothing to do with our security. It was only to make money, and the reason being is because once they become a NATO member, there's what's known as the NATO standard. So if you were to buy a 5.56 M4 on the side, it's going to say 5.56 NATO standard, and that means the weapon has been made to NATO standards. It means the rounds are made to NATO standards. It means all the parts are made to NATO standards. So it's money. We are trying to make money. When you hear foreign aid, when we are giving another country foreign aid, that is not we're not giving them a paycheck. All that money stays here in the US. What we're doing is we're giving it to American companies to now build uh, weapons and equipment for these overseas countries. So that's all it is. It's Boeing, it's General Dynamics, it's Colt Firearms. All these companies making money off of this stuff. So whenever there's conflict, they're looking to cash in, and that's what's happening. So, you know, I understand most Americans don't understand foreign aid packages, how they work, but no, that's what it is. It's about keeping American workers working and creating more money here in the U.S.
For sure. And this is the one of the biggest things, and I'm glad you brought up with a lot of these companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing. I mean, the list goes on all these companies. At the end of the day, who owns all those companies? There's one company and one company alone, and that's BlackRock. Now, back during the 2024 Republican debate, Tim Scott mentioned this as a loan. Now, what is this loan? All this money that we're coming up with, this $113 billion that we're just sending over. They call it a loan. Well, what that loan is, and the reason why they call it a loan, is because if you call something a loan, you now have to do what is called as loan conditions. Now, in Ukraine, there's a big part of it that is all agricultural lands and farmlands. They call it the breadbasket of Europe. And for centuries, people have fought for this land. Up to this day, people are fighting for this land. And the most important issue that regards to this loan is that Ukraine has to put up all of its country's assets and all of its agricultural lands, which means all these private companies can now come in and purchase that land. Now, what companies are buying this land? Because right now, I think it's up to maybe 40 or 50% of it is already being sold. What companies are buying that land? It's going to be DuPont, Cargill, and Monsanto. Companies are buying this land from the Ukraine. Now, who owns all those companies? BlackRock. This is a war that is being forged and pushed by the military industrial complex, which is then circling right back to all the bigger industries in this country. And this is something that people say, oh, that's too far-fetched. That would never happen. Well, it's happening right in front of everybody's eyes. And as long as you look for it, and if you're smart enough to look for it, you will find it. And that's exactly what people have to do and are starting to see in this country.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yeah, it goes back to I look at some of these people with these opinions, and they have, like they want us involved more in Ukraine, but yet a lot of the people saying that are anti-corporatist. And it's like you mentioned, DuPont, Monsanto. Yeah, these large corporations are the ones who are benefiting. Your mom and pop people aren't going into Ukraine to do anything. So yeah, you're just feeding into the corporate machine. I do want to put this up here. This is your Twitter. So for those of you on X, definitely go give Daniel a follow. As you see, he's got some well thought out opinions, uh, and that's absolutely true of your X account as well. I follow you on X. Make sure you're sending me stuff to retweet because I do want to make sure I'm supporting you. Uh, I'm a big person to I like supporting people. Um, but before we close out here, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about?
I think that's pretty much everything, Skip. Of course, I want to thank everyone for watching, and of course, thank you and your team for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on with you. So, with that being said, I think at the end of the day, people in this country have to really look at what's going on, look at the issues at hand, and say, "Hey, this is not right," and we're coming for them because those Democrats and liberal establishment people, and even some Republican establishment people, they know that they're at risk. And if Donald Trump wins, they're going to be out of a job. And that's at the end of the day exactly what they're fighting for and what we as Americans have to fight for. So those are my comments. If you want to cover anything, I'm more than happy to talk about it. But if make sure you get out there and vote for Donald Trump, and let's take this country back.
I do want to show a couple things here. So up there in the corner, I've got the Battle Buddies app. If you know of any veterans who are struggling, send them to the Battle Buddies app. They'll reach out and be able to talk to a veteran mentor like myself and a couple others, and we're going to help them through whatever crisis that they're going through. Also, I'm going to put our QR code up here. Support our nonprofit. So veterannationfoundation.com. That is our uh, that is our foundation that we started. It is a nonprofit. If you go there, buy some of our merchandise. If you buy our merchandise, we're going to get a couple dollars back to help veterans. You're going to get a T-shirt, a mug, a hat, whatever you're buying. So everybody wins. I mean, I'm thankful when people give donations, but I would much rather you get something out of it. Same thing is we now have memberships on YouTube. If you join our membership, you'll actually get a discount code to Veteran Nation Foundation because we do appreciate the support, and we want you guys to get something out of supporting our show, supporting what we do here. I do see Kanu, he put the link here. So yeah, you can go to Battle Buddies. It's run by You Matter Not Alone. You can actually, if Android, iPhone, it's in the app store of whatever app or whatever phone you have. Uh, um, sorry, I just saw something that I thought I wanted to put up, but I don't. Uh, so yeah, you want to go to your app store, look up Battle Buddies. That's how you spell it right there, and yeah, that way you can make it through whatever whatever crisis that you or that veteran is going through. Make sure you're following Daniel at Real Daniel Toner on X. Uh, Daniel, thank you so much for coming back on the show again. Whenever you'd like to come on again, just shoot me a message and I'll have you back on. Same thing if you're working on anything that you need to promote in your area, let us know. We want to support you.
For sure. It's always a pleasure, Skip. Thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. For all of you joining, please like, share, subscribe this. We thank you for your comments. I still will be responding to your comments after this replay is done. So if you have a question or a comment, still feel free to leave it. Join our memberships because you will get a couple perks. And as always, thank you for being worth serving.